Niosa's Day. She who watches the great voids of sea and space. The trickster goddess of madness, seduction, and humour. Breakfast was over, and Captain Sitar rubbed her eyes. While she didn't mind the midnight shift, crawling in her rack sounded particularly good today. The downtime over Ifrovi had been a treat. Not that her girls let their guards down, but watching Kalira was infinitely easier when there was no one around Kalira. With a few exceptions during the holy days, things had been relatively quiet. The campus would soon be filled by a tide of returning students, the recent tranquility shattered by the flood. Anyone about Kalira's perimeter would need to be swiftly assessed, and that was a constant struggle. It was like preterm all over again, as students returned to their dorms, accompanied by curious siblings, fretting fathers and mothers being helpful. Too many parents would wander about, trying to get an in for their other children, showing off for each other, and making a nuisance of themselves. The news was aflutter with coverage of the wedding, and that was all she needed. Sitar rubbed her eyes again, but it had nothing to do with the time of day. Warwick's mad dash with the flowers had led to a small riot, but it was only a few dozen women. The idea of a whole campus following him around gave her indigestion. They were squared away for tomorrow, though Agent Davari breathing down their necks didn't help. It wasn't as if she could blame the women either. I swear, if humans weren't cute and articulate, we'd put them next to the rhino and forget about them. How can they be such trouble magnets? Kalira's morning revelation had added an extra helping of nausea to the day. Somewhere outside, her opposite number might be in motion. It was not a comforting thought. They needed more personnel, but command was in knots. Davari had put in requests to family support, but they were growing moss somewhere. The Empress's departure has shortened out the decision tree. Asking for more personnel? Sure, but explaining that their princess had been under attack by another princess, and now was under threat by her sister-in-law? Who'd want to approve that request? Davari was welcome to try, but Sitar wasn't holding her breath. For now, her girls were alert and focused. The ground teams were in position. Lieutenant Tala was filling in for Solanna, and by all accounts, Sergeant Kalani's replacement knew her ass from a hole in the ground. They'd face what came tomorrow. It was the unexpected that was giving her an ulcer. The campus would get back to normal in the next couple of days. Maver Pelavon and Kalira's other professors had the good sense to keep to themselves or stay at home. If Lady Pelavon would just keep her husband behind closed doors, that would be a blessing. The smart credits said if she didn't, Solanna damn well would. But that was tomorrow's problem. She still had one morning left to sleep in. The girls in her pod, Jelk and Ralan, were ready to hand over their boars to Diani and Yala from Pod 9, and she had followed suit with Biona once they were done. At the moment, Kalira was tucked away in the Academy Hotel, mulling over her options, and thank the goddess, she'd reached a sensible conclusion. The Academy wasn't an ideal place for security, but generations of family support teams had done their best. If the bunker was short-staffed, it could still withstand a full combat assault, and the ground pods would pull Kalira in at the first hint of trouble. The tunnels were a nightmarish warren of bolt holes and traps, and once she was secure, there were options. The goal was Kalira getting out alive. It wasn't a battle she wanted to fight, but it was a battle she was equipped to win. Now I just have to survive listening to my people. She loved her pod, but she'd seen the backside of 20 a few years ago. When you got older, little things started to matter. The prospect of laying in bed and waking up at normal hours had its appeal. Live like a normal woman, find something to do, get an apartment, maybe get lucky and find a guy, but she was a death's head. She loved the service, adored Kalira, and would lay down her life if need be. But she was the oldest woman in the bunker, and it would be nice to get through just one shift, without all the ritual clam beating. Come on, you know we gotta watch, Diani insisted. Jelk was logging out of her board, and she shook her head. Seriously? You want to watch Captain Tonnis getting it on with Professor Warwick? Not like we didn't watch him with Lady Pelavon. Diani leaned back nonchalantly, and her smile was pure sin. Besides, that thing you did with the towel was epic. Goddess, I'd love to have a guy do that to me. 20 credits says she doesn't last 5 minutes. There are officers here, Roland said pensively, and Sitar whispered a silent prayer of thanks. Roland was capable, smart, efficient, and when it came to men, utterly clueless. The talk had already turned her 3 different shades of blue and left her squirming in her chair, but she was still one of the girls. 2-to-1 odds? Sitar shot Biona a look and got a nod in return. While large, the bunker was smaller than a starship, and there were no unfamiliar faces. No shore leave. If you wanted to keep your sanity, then there were times you turned a deaf ear for the sake of morale. Do you really want to watch Captain Tonnis's ass riding him all night? 20 credits says 10 minutes tops, and it won't be her ass I'm watching. 40. Jelk pushed back from the console and stood up. The board is yours. Diani slid into place and logged in. I have the board, and you're on. You want a piece of this, Yala? Roland followed suit, handing off her board, and Yala took a moment to log on. I have the board, and 30 credits says she goes longer than 10, but only if she has to spend time undressing him and he doesn't do the towel thing. 2-to-1 if she doesn't have to undress him, and 3-to-2 if she does. What about the towel? 5-to-3 if he does the towel thing, Diani nodded. Jelk took over Diani's spot against the wall. You're all going to the deeps. You know that, right? That means you aren't going to bed? Diani bit her lip while running a system check. 20 credits. 20 more says she's a screamer. Done. I bet she's going to be a moaner. Diani laughed. She had an earthy chuckle that came out when she talked about guys or easy money, and Roland turned another shade of blue. What if she passes out? Yala suddenly asked. Before or after she comes, Diani said as she ran a camera check. 5-to-1 says she doesn't pass out. These were fairly simple bets as such things went. Women on a deployment could bet on anything, though fighting was best and Warwick's wargame had been a welcome release. Out in the field, Oz could be set over how an enemy was armed, who got in the first kill, who opened fire. She's seen women haggle like fiends over details as obscure as the colour of an enemy's armour, or a pod's weapon load. It was a way to relieve stress before a battle, and while big money was off limits, it was good for morale before a battle. It said, I plan to be alive to collect when I win, or at least complain if I lose. So, are you in or not, Roland? I don't know. Besides, we aren't supposed to use the camera in his bedroom anymore, Roland said stubbornly. Don't you think getting off on this is wrong? The betting or the fucking? Both! Hey, I wash my hands. Besides, do you really think they'll stay in the bedroom? They might. The captain knows where the cameras are. Has he ever stayed in the bedroom? But you're right. 3-to-2 if she uses up time undressing him, but no deal without proof. Ladies, Pod 6 has control. That is, if you're done. Biona broke in, making her point. Sure thing, Captain. Jolky gave a cheeky smile, dragging Roland to the door. We can take a hint. I won't take odds on that, but if you leave now, I'm willing to pretend. Biona sighed, as the pair disappeared up the hall. I don't know how you manage those two. I get by. And I could say the same about you and yours, Sitar said quietly. Just got to love your pod. Biona nodded in a shared understanding. Captain to captain, then whispered, 20 credits says she's a screamer. Sitar was only a couple of years older than Biona, but her look was so old-fashioned it might have been prehistoric. Before, during, or after? 3-for-2 before, 2-to-1 if it's during and after. Done. The morning battle plan around the kitchen table descended into speculation, and it was getting on Melonde's nerves. The idea of waiting things out on the campus has some virtues, but it begged one question. How long would her mother be gone? The bulk of Home Fleet remained deployed, but the elements that returned only knew the Empress intended to conduct mopping up operations and a dialogue while she was near Alliance space. Overtly, it would concern the piratical activity that killed Calandri, and probably extend an offer of cooperation. In reality, she was making a statement, and would probably visit a dozen systems, tying them in knots. A main battle fleet could do that. Fetching Calandri's remains had been a duty. Staying to find every last crewwoman possible had won the love of the fleet. Again. But lingering about to make the Alliance choke on it? That was for her satisfaction, but it came with a cost. The Empress was not on shill. Add in the travel time back from the border, and it could be weeks, even months. Would it be better to drop out for the semester and stay in the palace, or remain on campus? What if the term ended and her mother still hadn't returned? Goddess, what if she never returned? Would Trinia try anything? If word came that the Empress was returning, did she dare not to? Would Vadim understand? They were the sort of questions she needed Wakama for, or Davari. Both. Zinchiki thought Professor Warwick might help. Her friends meant well, and their questions were thought-provoking, but they didn't know all the particulars, and that was frustrating. She needed sound advice, but the choice had to be hers. Endangering her friends, the other students, Professor Warwick and his wives. People had died. The campus sounded like a risk, but it was also a shield. The palace was the most secure place in the Imperium, but against her sister-in-law, maybe even her brother. I need to think, she said. Letzi had stared bleakly at her omnipad throughout the morning. Now she waved at it, looking bereft. I need to call Keplan. We have a date tonight, but I've got no idea where to take him. Everything good is either sold out, or tickets cost a platinum mine. I need another muffin, Zinchiki said, as if announcing that fire was hot, and Melondi briefly considered strangling her. But a muffin did sound good. Letzi's omnipad rang, and she picked it up warily. Hello? I could use another, Deshin admitted. Blueberry's nice. I bet they mix well with tarfa berries. That settled it. She hadn't felt like eating, but her stomach had other ideas, and rumbled. Fresh muffins sounded delicious. Mel? Letzi stared at her omnipad like it was threatening to bite her. Letzi, what's wrong? You're turning grey. Desala took her hand. He didn't cancel, did he? Some woman called and said, Good morning, my name is Lorem Raylin. Take him to the fireworks, then hung up. Letzi held up her omnipad. There are tickets for the Stratos. How? Desi blurted out. There aren't supposed to be cameras in the hotel. How is she doing that? Our omnipads are on, Desala muttered. Try having her visit you at home. Letzi looked around the table, then back at her omnipad. Should I take the tickets? You've got them, so it's kind of past that. Desala cocked her head. Besides, do you know how much tickets cost for the Stratos? It says they're... Oh, Empress's tits! That is never, ever not going to be weird. Desi leaned back in her chair. I know the tickets are more than I could ever afford, so excuse me if I just stick with the... How does she do that? How does that kind of thing just happen? Melondi considered the notion. It wasn't something that happened all the time, but... It's just one of those things, you know? No, Mel, it is not one of those things. Desi threw her hands up in the air. Normal people do not give holiday speeches to the entire galaxy or get calls out of thin air bestowing tickets. Mel rested her chin on her hands and smiled sweetly. You gave the speech, not me. Oh, lick me, Desi glared back. It took me a day to stop throwing up when I thought about it. Fine. Lick me, your Imperial Highness. Better. Melondi nodded in satisfaction. Maybe Raylin was spooky, but it was a spooky she'd grown up with, and it seemed best not to dwell on the matter. Let's go talk to your father. I need a muffin. Zinchiki flowed out of her seat without looking back. That's what I've been telling all of you. Mel savoured the irony. Maybe it was a joke from Nyosa. Nobody could be having a more unnatural morning. Sipping her morning cup of English breakfast, Melody couldn't help smiling. The mid-morning sun was warm through the windows, but warmth in equal measure came from within, too. The previous night had been a late one. There had been a great deal to say, and by the time all three of them had asked and answered all the questions, they'd been teetering on the verge of exhaustion. This morning, though? Her smile widened and she gave a contented sigh. The sound of shuffling feet and a salutatory grunt intruded on her reverie. "Good morning, Elijah. Technically." "Morning," her brother-in-law croaked as he lumbered towards the refrigerator. "What's to eat?" Melody shrugged artfully. "Nobody made anything. It's been a bit of a lazy morning." "Nothing," Eli groaned. "Levi must have just made something for himself." "Levi hasn't made it to breakfast either. Last I heard, he was talking about a shower." "Lovely." With an expression that suggested he'd bitten into a lemon, he began rummaging in the fridge. "I, for one, am grateful for sturdy, soundproof Shulvanti construction." "Funny thing, I can recall that same sentiment being expressed by, all right." He emerged from the depths of the fridge, gnawing on what Melody suspected held the record for greatest distance travelled by a summer sausage in the history of the universe. "Mock me all you want, but I face a trial, a true dilemma. I need my strength. A great mind can't run on an empty stomach." Melody's smile threatened to split into a grin, and she raised an eyebrow. "You really know how to hurt a guy, Mel." Eli bit another chunk off the meaty cylinder and waggled it at her in an admonitory fashion. "And I'll have you know I'm turning over a new leaf. Righting my wrongs. I'm not the same Eli you once knew." "You don't say." "I'm serious. I'm light years from Earth with a real problem on my hands. I have no idea who could—" "Eli?" She looked up worriedly to where he was staring, wide-eyed and mouth hanging open. "Eli, are you all right?" "Melody!" he exclaimed, pointing. "You're a girl!" "Yes?" She tilted her head in confusion. "Thank you for noticing." No. He waved a hand as he sat down across the table from her. "I need advice. Let's say, hypothetically, you were hoping someone was going to propose to you." "Hypothetically?" "Exactly. Now, how would you want that to happen? Like, does it have to be a big thing with fanfare, royalty, and strippers? Or is it something low-key cool?" "Strippers?" "You know, like Tom did for his first wedding." "What?" "You must not have been there for that conversation." "Eli, is this some kind of prank?" "No!" He gave her a wounded look. "Does that sound like something I would do?" Melody just stared. "Exactly. Now, come on, this is serious." "Who are you proposing to exactly?" "Who says I'm the one proposing to anyone?" "You expect me to believe you're asking for a friend? Here, where you don't know anyone?" "We're getting sidetracked." Eli waved a hand airily. "Because if it's to someone you just met, and they've convinced you to stay, that's how you end up in somebody's basement for the rest of your life." "Now you're just being melodramatic." He gave a melodramatic sigh. "No, I'm not proposing to anyone who lives on Shill. There, happy?" "Ecstatic." "Great. So, ideas? Thoughts? Opinions?" "Why are you asking me?" Melody frowned. "Wouldn't it be better to ask a Shulvanti girl? Riala will be out soon, and—" "That's not a great idea," he winced. "I'm pretty sure she's still sore over the whole Empress sucks thing." "Have you asked her?" "Ah-cha-cha-cha-cha! Ideas." "Well, usually there are rings." "Too cliché." Melody blinked. "Too cliché?" Eli nodded. "Also, I'm broke. What else?" Well, if you're leaning more towards Shulvanti tradition, you could do a tattoo of some kind." "Nah." He shook his head. "Not a huge fan of pain." "Not a fan?" "What else?" Melody threw up her hands. "I don't know, take her to dinner?" "No need to get grumpy." He held up his hands in surrender. "Maybe you should eat some breakfast before we get too far into it." Melody looked down as he held the partially eaten summer sausage out, then back up at his earnest expression. That's very thoughtful of you, Eli, but I should probably fix something for everyone else too. She rose and moved to the refrigerator. Why don't you just talk to the girl you want to propose to? Surprises are all well and good, but something that important needs to be discussed by all parties. I mean, I guess. It just seems kinda lame, though. What seems lame? Levi strolled into the kitchen wearing a t-shirt and shorts, hair still damp from the shower. Your sense of humour or your pick-up lines? Riala followed, clad in a bathrobe and equally sodden. Oh, be nice. Melody shot a half-hearted reproachful glance at Riala, who grinned in return. I just started on breakfast. Should be ready in 10. I love it when you talk like that. Levi kissed her on the cheek before retrieving plates and utensils. And that's my cue. Eli rose from the table and strode out of the kitchen. Good talk, Mel. Let me know if you think of anything else. What was that about? Riala watched him go with a worried frown. You know? Melody tapped a finger to her chin. I'm not entirely sure. Hannah McClendon rolled with the blow before bouncing off the wall. Her head rang, but she was up on her feet before the next one landed. Shorvanti were big and powerful, but slow. Still, she never expected to be in a fight with one, and her heart was pounding. She rolled, kicking out at the exposed knee, and was rewarded with a grunt. Nice! Jalissa Tandala, her Jedi Master in all things Tidepool, raised her arms and closed in again. Didn't expect you to get up that fast. Miss McCready's gymnastics class. She was big on cardio. Hannah saw Jalissa's fist coming in like a mallet, and dodged, but it still connected with her arm. Fuck! That hurt! You whine like a boy. Hannah's omnipad rang, and Jalissa straightened up. Getting calls already? Tell me it's a guy. As if, Hannah huffed, glad of the reprieve. Shorvanti might be slow, but Jalissa wasn't slow for a Shorvanti, and the morning had been a punishing exercise in learning how to take a hit. She picked up her water, grabbed the omnipad, and opened the call on speaker. Hello? Hannah? Hi? Solanna? Yeah. Why are you breathing hard? Are you with a guy already? No, I'm not with a guy. Hannah rolled her eyes at Jalissa, who was leering for much the same reason. She took a pull from her water and sat down, sore in places she'd never felt pain before. So, what's up? I need some advice. Hannah blinked. She knew Solanna, but they weren't exactly buddies. Even without the age difference, it was like dealing with a female Eli, and... Okay, ew. Still, Solanna was her brother's mother-in-law's co-wife's daughter. It made for relations a genealogist would need a Sherpa guide to navigate, but her father just said, family, and that was that. Okay, buy low, sell high? It's about guys. Hannah checked to see if she was still sitting down, because it felt like she'd been hit in the head again. Solanna Dasari wanting advice on guys? She tried to sound unflappable, but the universe just went sideways. What kind of advice? How would you propose to a guy? This can't be real. It's Nyosa's day. I must be knocked out on the floor and dreaming. Jalissa's interest wasn't helping. Propose? To who? What difference does it make? Solanna said. It came across as more testy than Hannah liked, but convinced her she wasn't dreaming. Hannah gave an inaudible sigh and got on with it. It makes a lot of difference. Is it a Shorvanti guy? I mean, I thought you'd know. He's not a Shorvanti guy. Hannah waited. Information was not forthcoming. Do I have to guess? Solanna, a marriage proposal is personal. I need a little more to go on, you know? Maybe you should talk to Riala. I'm not even married. Oh no, not happening. No! Okay, so, this guy. Jalissa's grin grew wider, and Hannah shook her head. Taking the call off speaker would be way too sus now. This purely hypothetical guy you want to propose to, you must know something about him. You know you need to make it special, right? Personal? What works for a Shivanti? Never mind about me. How would you do it? How would you? Jalissa whispered. Her cheeky grin had reached Cheshire Cat proportions, and Hannah buried her mortification. A bordello of spies was no place to look squeamish. I've had dates. Of course I've had dates. A few dates, at least. I've dated. It hadn't been a lot of dates, but there was a matter of pride. I'm not a wallflower. Fine. Whatever the big secret is from me, just don't make it a total surprise to the guy. Talk to him so you have an idea how it will go. We've talked, mostly. I'm satisfied. Shivanti were as uncertain as humans when it came to starting relationships. Probably more so, but once they settled on someone, they hung on for dear life. It was probably something to do with guys being that rare, but that didn't matter. Solanna had settled on someone. Goddess help him, whoever he is. Okay, fine, you're satisfied. Asking if the guy was satisfied felt like opening a can of worms. I know it's a human thing, but I wouldn't ignore what he wants. Just be thoughtful about his feelings. Okay, thoughtful. I can do that. Good, that's a big step. Not just for proposing, but for any relationship. Got it. Anything else? Well, I wouldn't make a big speech or anything. It's kind of a big deal, and if I messed up, I'd feel like a goofball for the rest of my life. Just tell him how you feel, why they're important, then ask. That helps. I mean, all the movies have big speeches and stuff. It's not a movie. Just be sincere. You can make it personal, right? Sure. Could you get me a deal on some strippers? Tom poured another cup of coffee. The hotel suite was nice, large enough to handle a modest Shivanti family of 8, and the room seemed cavernous. Comfortable, but cavernous, and he'd been missing their apartment. The bed felt too high, the kitchen was a pain in the ass, and he missed his coffee maker from Earth. At least water wasn't a problem. The Shivanti standard for hot water was not quite boiling. But some days shouldn't be faced drinking instant. Miv and Leia had already gone into the city. Leia was going home, but Miv wanted to bring a few pictures back for the campus apartment. Solanna was up and sitting across the counter, looking bemused. She'd watched as he heard Melondi out, while she spelled out her concerns over what to do. Desi had thrown in her 2 cents worth about the plan. Zinchiki had polished off the muffins he'd made, like it was a grudge match. Humans might have speed and stamina, but how every alien seemed supermodel thin was a cruel joke being played by the universe. Or maybe it was Nyosa. No one should be able to eat like that. Tom focused on Melondi and thought about what she'd said, mulling it over while he sipped his coffee. It still burned his tongue, and he gave it up for now. It's not a good plan. Why not? Solanna demanded. This was her territory, and he knew he was trespassing. Tom, just trust me. We have everything we can need in the bunker. I know I'm down for now, but our girls are the best. That's not exactly what I meant, Tom sighed. Try not to impugn the honor of the Marines. This is just my perspective, so hear me out. Melondi, Kalira, gave him a firm nod, and Solanna subsided. He could see her distress, but there was nothing to be done about her arm. Another week, then there would be therapy. She'd be back in action. Back in the bunker. None of which meant he hadn't just stepped on her pride, but he'd make some amends for that later. And I'm not focusing on the question. Right. So this may be a dumb question, but I'm just thinking this through. From what you're telling me, you have your death's heads, and let's say your brother isn't involved. Tom had his doubts, but there didn't seem any benefit from bringing them up. He grimaced after another sip, but it was drinkable. It was bitter to swallow, and he wasn't sure if he was thinking about the situation or drinking instant. That means it's just your sister-in-law, right? Kalira nodded. She looked more focused than he felt. Fine. Your sister-in-law has her and Laurel's devs heads. You have your interior agent, and she actually was an agent. From all the details you're giving me, this is a chess game, and you're at a stalemate. Tom waited half a moment for some sign of approval. This wasn't class, and right now Kalira wasn't being Melondi. He felt out of his depth. There are 3 questions that popped to mind. Let's leave aside your concerns about everyone's safety and just deal with the situation. Trust me, I appreciate the concern, but it's distracting you. First, it's not like people haven't already made attempts on you here. He saw Solanna chewing that over and kept going. As a student, you have a routine. Even with people watching you around the clock, that's bad. It only takes one person with nothing to lose, or another nutcase like Tejo. An expendable person may be hard to find, but they're also hard to stop, and they only need to get lucky once. Second, aside from Shinshiki, his audience looked less than thrilled. Kalira nodded anyway. Second, it's passive. Tom started ticking the points off his fingers. You've explained a bit to me about how the Imperium runs. I know I don't see all the layers, but your reputation as a Tasu matters. If not with your family, there's still the Assembly of Nobles. Look at the way people reacted to your speech the other night. Case in point. Tom watched the girl shift uneasily and carried on. You don't want to be a sitting target, and you don't want a reputation of using other girls as personal shields while you hide. That's not fair. No, it isn't. But can you imagine someone else making the accusation if the story came out? Even if it's not true, do you want to set yourself up for that kind of political damage? Melondi crossed her arms, then uncrossed them, then crossed them again. They'd never say it to my face, but behind closed doors. It's possible. I see what you mean, sir, even if I don't like it. There's no reason you should, but you ought to appreciate the risks since you have to live with them. Tom took another pull from his cup and frowned. Instant coffee was awful. It wasn't just the poor beans and bad roasting. It left an oily residue that made it bitter, and the bitter, acidic taste wasn't helping his mood. I was going to say that life is like coffee, but you don't drink it. He knew Desi didn't like it, but Shinshiki recoiled. The look on her normally inscrutable face nearly made him laugh. It's an acquired taste. My point is, life is about the choices we make. Everything we say, or don't. Everything we do, or don't. Our words and our actions define who we are to other people. They open up doors, or close them. They define who we become. You can choose to live with your head down. Stay in line. Be what you're told you should be and accept it. Hide in the academy, fort up, and wait for the Empress to come home and save you. Or you can take a stand for what you believe. I believe I don't want to be killed. I know I don't want other people around me to die, even though it's happened. I know it's something my mother accepts, but I don't want to take it for granted, she replied. I'm not like one of those monarchs in your world war. I don't want someone's death to feel pointless. There were moments when the Shivanti were well and truly alien. It came out in all sorts of ways. Some of it could be horrific, like Bodin's early attempts at human food. Some of it could be tragic, like the invasion itself. But usually the Shivanti were just people, wanting to do their best in a universe that didn't hand out instructions. Your Highness, you were supposed to be married off for a political advantage. Desi was supposed to be a marine, or who knows what. Shinshiki, she was supposed to just be a mercenary. No one expected her to even like school, much less flourish. And me? I was supposed to just stay home waiting to die. The words startled the girls. The open admission nearly startled himself. It's the times like these, the moments you don't expect, when you have the chance to become who you really are. So, what do you think I should do, sir? I think you should sit tight and fort up here at the academy. Tom thought Lani and Desi were going to burst, and he held up his hand. It wasn't a gesture the Shivanti used, but they'd figured it out. Just for now. If you think the assets at your disposal and the assets at hers will balance out, find a way to tip things in your favor. This is chess, but it's also like Lido. And the reality is that the first person who makes the right move wins, and the person who doesn't loses. Figure out what that right move is, then hit her until it's no longer funny. From what you've told me, you don't dare give her a second chance.
So, find new options. Calera nodded thoughtfully. There are people I can reach out to. Lady Samilla.
Don't know who she is, but sure. Now you're thinking again. Tom nodded. Keep going.
She's scary, father.
Desi shook her head warily.
I thought everyone knew who she was.
Well, I don't, but meeting scary women isn't the novelty it used to be. Tom gave Solanna a wink. Look at your co-mother.
He's right, Solanna nodded. I didn't see it at first, Your Highness, but he's right. There isn't a woman in the bunker who wouldn't give her life for the woman you're turning into. They didn't like the notion of Camaldry on the throne, and they'd hate what you suspect your sister-in-law is doing.
What if she succeeds? Would you want to see that be the Tissue legacy?
I know I wouldn't.
Calera nodded with conviction, though she didn't look happy about it.
I just don't want to screw this up, Captain. I'm not my mother. I'm not a Marine, and maybe this isn't the time for self-pity, Your Highness. Maybe this is about being the kind of woman you want to be. Everyone in the bunker understands that, but we're all down there cheering you on. Just look at everything that's happened since the Empress left Shill. She's strong, but how strong is the Imperium if it turns on itself the moment she leaves? You know what you know, and you know what you don't. You aren't your mother, but maybe that's not so bad. You take advice and you listen. So now's the time for you to keep your eyes on your enemies, figure out a plan, and make them slip up, because we think you'll make a fantastic Empress.
Solanna's mechanical hand slammed down on the counter. Cutlery rattled.
Maybe now's just your time for a little less contemplation, and a little more spent kicking their ass.
The Tao helps those who help themselves. Tom looked at his bride with a new sense of awe and a lot more respect for the power in her prosthetic arm. A cloned replacement before a honeymoon took on a new dimension. The thought of Solanna gripped by unbridled lust, or even a quick handjob. So, options. There have to be more. Senshiki, what about your family warband?
My warband is under contract to Duchess Eliana Varun. Our people live by our reputation, Senshiki said flatly. They will not break their contract.
Tom frowned, picking at what he knew about Pezrin culture. It had been thin to begin with. Not even to save the life of a princess?
Not against a prince. The situation is too unstable, and they will preserve their reputation.
Senshiki turned to Calera and blinked.
You have me, but that is how they will see things.
Tom gestured with his coffee cup, but thought better about sipping. What about the 20 Kahachakt?
Those are rules, but there are also customs, she said, flicking her aside dismissively.
Tom let that go, filing it away for later. Okay, fine, but the principle still stands. We need to consider what assets you have that Trinia doesn't. Like it or not, you have to face that your brother may be involved. We have to ask what their weaknesses are. Even if it's just Trinia, what's holding her back? In the great game of life, love, and politics, you did what you must, but nothing came easy. The greater the prize, the larger the cost.
But why, Trinia? Why? Lorau pleaded. He was distraught, pacing before their bedroom window. He didn't understand, but how could he? Why did you agree to it? He cried again. Because she wanted it. She's my oldest friend and comes from a respected family. And you agreed? Just because she saved your life in the interior when you were agents?
Trinia raised her arms as if beseeching Shill.
Well, what could I say? What could you say?
Trinia heard pacing again. You could have said no.
I would not say no. I saw no reason to say no. She's my daughter too.
She spun about and waved helplessly.
We're old friends, and I understood why she wanted it. After that rumor about the Silver Suns?
Lorau glared up at her.
So could anyone. Those were never proven. Never.
She loved her husband, but wasn't above wagging a finger when he was being difficult. And these were difficult times. And what would you have done? Our family is splintered. The Empress is gone and returning who knows when. The Assembly of Nobles is restless. She ticked each point off on her fingers. It makes a statement. Solidarity between old houses. Tradition. Permanence. I could have handled her. Without offending one of my oldest and dearest friends? That was laying it on a bit deep, but Laurel was too distraught to notice. I could have. Her son is too old, and to just assume to enter the Tasu family shows an appalling lack of modesty. Prendy is nearly 4. Rochelle is barely 8. And she isn't just a Tasu. She's a Tesseran as well. Or does that mean nothing? Laurel planted himself beneath her, crossing his arms. And how will that look when she turns 12? How will it look when they're wed? And who will care 30 years from now? Who? The Assembly will say it's scandalous, pledging her in marriage at this age. They say something no matter what, but quick as a riptide, they'd have lined their sons up to take a chance. That is a foolish expression, and I wish to the deeps you'd stop using it. Laurel rolled his eyes in aggravation. Have you thought of what my mother will say? It's my expression, and I'll use it if I like. It's my estate and my home, and I laid it at your feet. I'd do anything for you, and always have. It was a cheap shot, yet it fell home. She loved Laurel and had never taken advantage of him, but this was for his good. And Prendy's. Does that mean anything? After all we've been through, all we've lost, and all I've done, do I mean nothing in our own house? Have you no feelings for anyone but your name? Laurel turned away, and his hand shook in distress. But he said nothing, and she knew she'd won. There would be recriminations, possibly for years, but she would get her way. She cared about his name as well. You know that's not what I meant. Laurel turned back. Don't twist what I'm trying to say. Twist it. Trinia turned away now, not meeting his eyes. She knew Laurel, and sometimes even a woman could show her feelings. How else am I supposed to take it? She said miserably. She felt his hand slide around her waist a minute later. I'm sorry. I know you do your best for me. It's just... our Prendy. We have to look to her future. It's for the best. She lay her hand over his and nodded. Let me come to you tonight? Tonight? You mean... It's been too long, Laurel. All this running around with your mother, and there's only the 3 of us. I want to be a mother again, she whispered. You deserve more. All right. Tonight. She felt the warmth of him as he hugged her tighter. I'd like another little girl. I know, love. I know. She leaned back, laying her head gently atop his. We could name her Aurelia. As her vehicle wove through the busy streets, Lorem Raelin picked up her omnipad and placed a call. Tom Warwick espoused that humanity was civilized. He could even be eloquent, despite having worn a sword at his wedding. An interesting contrast, if incongruous. His latest container had just cleared customs. The man had ordered more swords. Moreover, he was exploring his boundaries with the Natasha warband. Serendipitous. Who knew what might be caught if that net was properly cast? Lamanna Davari answered her omnipad with commendable speed. Good morning, Minister. Providing clandestine security to their clients is a significant part of Natasha's work, I gather. It is. Good. Rhiannon liked that about Davari. While the woman was sometimes untethered, Davari never required a lengthy preamble to answer a simple question. Then I'll factor them into this. Arrange a meeting. A proper introduction to their Pathfinder, I believe. I'd have a word with your student, but I'm required elsewhere. Her warband is under contract to a Duchess, Eliana Varun, Davari replied. That can remain my concern. Nevertheless, it could be unwise to approach without an appropriate introduction. Please see to it. I plan to offer compensation. I doubt compensation will be a factor, Minister.
Raylin watched Ifrovi revelers outside her vehicle, as seaweed was thrown and perfect strangers were stacked with fish. It was the day she most wanted to be alone at home, but needs must. That's precisely why they may prove helpful.